Ladies and gentlemen, what I wanted to talk a little bit about today was something that has been on my mind ever since Brant released, and that is just how good this character makes this character feel. There are so many built-in synergies, so many nuances across Brant's kit that just makes a combination of these two, especially in, I'm gonna be honest, in pretty much every single content, every single mode in the game, that makes this character that I'm showing over here, Changli, feel like a completely new one. And I know that there are a lot of players in Wuthering Waves that love this character, that love how she worked in her quick swap teams in all of her other lineups in the past. However, there are still a lot of players who might have picked her up prior and weren't able to get a lot of mileage out of her simply due to some of the limitations in the other partners that she had before, specifically Changli. And so what I wanted to do today was break that all down, get into the nitty-gritty of why you should give this character, if you've given up on her, a second chance, as long as you are willing to pull this one. And so with that, let's just get into a slight demonstration firsthand of what this team actually does and why I think it's just so brilliantly well designed how they work together. So, getting right on into it, one thing that's amazing about Brant is simple. When you're in the air and you go to Brant, he just begins his air attack chain and you're able to do his full combo. And one thing about Changli that always makes her a little bit complicated to use, especially with a character like Changli, is that, well, most characters will immediately follow up on their swap with a plunge attack. Kind of like what we're seeing here for the Shorekeeper. And one thing is, Changli has a lot of ways to speed up her rotation time, right? Using a true sight in the air. And then Brant just immediately can come in and follow up with his full air rotation. And this level of synergy, right? Especially when Brant has his own quick swap windows, like on Return from Ashes and that massive nuke. The synergy is absolutely amazing for aerial combat specifically. And that is one area, right, where Changli shines. She's one of the only characters that will just have a full attack chain in the air that she can do. And so, I'm just showing raw gameplay, right? I'm just showing what it looks like when I'm testing out the various abilities and showing their interactions. Let's see what it looks like when I actually weave together a full rotation with the team. So what I'll be doing here is just building up the concerto bars, right? And the forte circuits of everybody on my team. Tank to hit there, no big deal. And then just swapping through, right? Build up all those inflaming stacks on Changli. Then I go ahead, build up another one, right? And then I can just go over onto Brant. I don't have my intro skill on Brant, but I don't really need it because I'm already starting in the air, especially alongside my liberation. And now I'm able to just follow up with a massive amount of burst damage. And that makes this comp feel amazing. How well these lineups seem to work together. This level of flow, this kind of like transition from one character to the other, it's just something that Changli has not really had before. The freedom, right? To not even need to use Brant's liberation to do some amazing swaps. And of course, right? I'm missing a couple of my abilities, but the damage is just so high right now that I don't need to be super efficient with those inflamement stacks. I'm able to miss a couple of them in my TOA clears and still get fantastic, amazing results. And so let me show you where there's a little bit of clunkiness with Changli's regular partners. Some areas, right, there's room for really suboptimal play that kind of fucks with her rotations. And this is the team that I'm going to use. This is, in a lot of ways, Changli's most popular team, at least prior to Brant being released. It would be a combination of her with Changli. And let me get right on into where the sort of barriers for entry are in a team comp like this and how it compares to Brant's. So with that, When Changli's in the air and you swap to Changli, you always end up doing a plunge attack, unless you're in one very specific animation. And this is the animation where it works. This is the animation where you can actually do something in the air. And that is the only real swap cancelable move Changli has in his kit. You can do something a little bit cool with this team, right? You can ultimate on Zhang Liao, use your E, swap to Changli, and then complete the rest of his attack, right? That's a neat swap cancel you can do. But sometimes you can mess up the timing and you end up doing a plunge attack. A common swap cancel pretty much every player uses is to just swap over to Changli, or swap over from Changli to Changli while he's in the middle of that animation. But that's kind of like the only real synergistic move that these characters have. And the rest of the time, right, you have to be constantly watching out when Changli's swapping in the air, when she, honestly, intro skills in the air. And it ends up being, oftentimes, a big barrier to getting efficient quick swaps. The fact that she just shows up right in the air after an intro skill, and then she follows up with her air true sight 99% of the time. And that makes the windows for this team a lot more complicated than Brant's. While when you're playing Brant, it doesn't matter if you show up on the ground. You can just press your resonance skill and then immediately be in the air. It doesn't matter if you swap from Changli to Brant while you're in the air, because Brant wants to be in the air. And what that does is that this comp is a little bit nuanced to play. It's a little bit difficult. It does a ton of damage if you do play it right, but there's a very specific chain of actions that you need to use for the comp to work well. Otherwise, you're going to be doing a shit ton of plunges. You're going to have dead time while Changli's in the air, and it can get really tricky really fast. And this is the thing. There are very few characters that work well with Changli and Quickswap and can actually fully leverage what makes her kit so interesting and so good. Another one that's actually very popular because of similar reasons for Brant is Jinxie. This is because when Jinxie enters this state, incarnation state, she's just able to seamlessly weave together her entire burst rotation with no issue at all. And it's very easy for her to enter it. She can attack while in the air. And that's what makes Quick Swap between these two characters feel a lot more seamless, especially when compared to a character, right, like Zhang Liao. And so Brant is a lot more similar to Jinxie comparatively to a Zhang Liao. And the thing is, right, the Jinxie Changli team has a couple of issues, primarily due to the fact that that Forte circuit that you're seeing over here, you're kind of like not really using that, right? You're not getting a great big stack on it. You're not doing a ton of damage with your Jinxie, but Brant doesn't have those problems. Brant doesn't really have those restrictions that you feel like are there. And the end result is that the Brant Changli team just feels really, really, really good. And it feels like you're making full use of Changli's kit every single time you have Brant on the field. And you get that smoothness of quick swapping with Jinxie, while of course also getting the buffing that Brant is providing as well. And this is the last part that I wanted to get into, or one of the last parts that I want to get into. And that's just how absurdly broken this guy's outro skill is. We're all familiar with the fact that Brant does a massive, massive amount of fucking damage every single time he activates his Forte circuit, right? Return from Ashes. That is 1.3k attack scaling, and he's getting a shit ton of attack when his liberation is active. This is a ton of damage for one character to be using, so much damage that he can be effectively played in hyper carry by simply slotting him with a sub DPS like Sanhua. He has competitive hyper carry numbers. He just does that much damage on his own. He is better in hyper carry than Changli is with a resonance skill buffer like Tao Chi or a resonance skill buffer like Jeja. Brant's hyper carry team performs so much better than Changli's, it's absolutely absurd. The time difference between these two in hyper carry is fucking insane. And the thing is, Brant, even with his intense hypercarry performance, he comes equipped with an outro skill that lasts a full 14 seconds that gives Changli all the freedom that she wants to do whatever she wants in her rotation. And he ends up adequately supporting characters like Carlotta as well because his outro skill is so long. And the thing is, I do think Brant's kit is a little bit overloaded. If he's able to be played in hypercarry, his damage is high enough based off of how his kit works, all of the scaling that you're seeing over here. Why is his outro skill 14 seconds? Why is it the same duration as dedicated sub-DPS buffers like Jeja and Yinlin? In a lot of ways, you could say that this dude's outro skill is actually broken. It's actually unfair. It is in some ways like a little bit power creepy. Because look at this. Look at Changli, one of his best partners. She does less damage than him in hypercarry. She has a similar sort of quick swap playstyle where you build up to a big burst like Brant does with his Forte circuit. She has her own that she builds up over her rotation. Obviously, the multipliers are a lot less, but she casts it twice when she changes it up with her liberation. Hers only lasts 10 seconds. Hers lasts 10 seconds, and she's worse in hypercarry than Brant. That's a little weird, isn't it? That's a little confusing. And so the way that I think Kuro Games designed Brant as a character is that, well, this is like the payoff. Having this full strength outro skill and this high level of performance, this is the payoff for doing an exceptional amount of grinding on his echoes to get him into that spot where he's like 250, 260, 70% ER while having incredible crit ratios. And he is one of the only characters in the game that is just able to be a full buffer or full healer and shielder and also be an adequate dual DPS sub DPS partner at the same time and then also play hypercarry. I'm gonna be honest, after testing this character and seeing him at his full potential, it kind of does seem a little bit unfair what he's getting relative to other characters. And so this is honestly my point of view after seeing this. I don't know why we even have 10-second outro skills in the game. I'm gonna be real. It just makes a character like Changli or a character like Lumi just feel weaker for kind of like no reason. When Brant's able to do the dual DPS role, the sub DPS, and the hypercarry while also healing and shielding, and he gets a full strength, full 14-second outro skill, the same exact outro skill that Yinlin, a dedicated sub DPS, has, except it's just fusion instead of electro. When Brant is getting this, it makes me wonder if this should really just be retroactively buffed. If this should be taken from 10 seconds to 14, because I'm gonna be real here. I don't really see why it's this weak in the first place. I don't really see why Changli needs to fall this far behind when Brant's kind of able to do a lot more, have a lot more roles, have a lot more teams, and then still have a better buffing ability. Of course, right? This is more of a testament to how good Brant is. This is more of a testament to how great his design is overall and the many things he can do. But I'm gonna be honest, he is making Changli look great in the overall teams and how they work, but he's also making her look a little bit worse as well. And I think it's a bit of like a double-edged sword. I think it is a bit of like an interesting conversation to have, because I think this is one situation that we might see developing in the future. I think this is holding Changli back in ways that doesn't really make sense, at least at this point in the game, when we're releasing with a character like Brant. And this is really, again, just a testament to how good Brant is if you are willing to go through the excruciating experience of building him in a min-max playstyle. Because my, oh my, the way that he elevates this character, he has made Changli so much better for so many players. And if I pulled Brant and I had good gear for him, I would now have a very, very strong argument to pull Changli as well. And if you're somebody, again, that pulled a Changli and has maybe benched her and maybe doesn't feel like they're getting a lot out of her playstyle, please experiment a little bit. Maybe see how Brant works. I think she has a try. I think he might have a trial with Changli. Just see how this combo works, how this combo feels, how absolutely ridiculously smooth the air interactions are. And I think you will definitely give Changli a second shot, because I played this duo together. It feels so much more free and so much more liberating than her comps with a character like Zhang Liao or even Havoc Rover. She feels like a new character because all of those restrictions, all of those plunges that you would have done, they just don't happen. You can swap whenever you actually want to in these characters' rotations, and it's absolutely, completely liberating. So with that, let me know what you all think. Hopefully this walkthrough has shown where all those strengths are, and peace out.